I'm your host, Bree Wild, and this is Marquee Memories. Here we sit down with your favorite artists to chat about their top concert memories as fans. Today's guests are keeping pop punk alive and well. Last year, they celebrated 20 years of being a band with a Forever tour, and now they're ushering in a new era with their 10th studio album, Everyone's Talking. Alex and Jack, all time low.
Hi.
Hi.
What's up?
So first of all, the last time I was on camera with you guys was 2007.
What?
We were in the back of a van outside MTV Studios. Jack wore sunglasses the entire time and spoke in third person.
Was this for BuzzNet?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I chewed gum. I was chewing gum. I laughed so hard you took over the interview for me. But
like
that's when you said Jack likes the Macarena and never lived that down. I was chewing gum and I got so much shit for it. Like, it was one of those things that went viral before we meant for things to go viral.
Right,
you know?
Yeah.
You know, and I got written into fan fiction as like a shitty reporter and everything.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was rough.
The internet's always
fan
a really,
fiction was savage.
The internet's always a really safe space.
It was funny too because when you took over my interview and grabbed my notebook, you flipped the pages and I had gone to a Juno press junket. So you started asking Jack questions from the Juno press junket.
Okay.
And you started talking about being pregnant.
Yeah.
All of this tracks.
Yes.
Like, none of it's shocking to me at all.
Was this in Santa Monica?
Yes.
Yeah, I was on a street in Santa Monica. I remember it very well, actually. I don't know why. I mean, because we watched it so many times.
Yeah.
Yes.
That interview lived on. Timeless.
It lived many lives.
Yeah.
It lived many lives. So happy to be back and not chewing gum and not wearing sunglasses.
Do you mind if I chew gum? This one? Can I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like we should all
restore the legacy, you know? Oh, also I wanted to remember, do you guys remember when we took you to Disneyland?
Yeah.
I feel like BuzzNet just dedicated like a large portion of
they were
their
like
budget
pretty
to
instrumental in like early kind of when we had
I mean, I feel like we sort of like we had like a symbiotic existence with BuzzNet.
We kind of came up together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was really fun. You kept looking in trash cans and saying, "Mom."
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Quality content back then.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff's coming back.
We invented content. Let's just say it right now.
Yeah.
We invented internet content.
It's true.
You're welcome, internet. Or
I'm sorry.
Or I'm sorry.
You're welcome and we're sorry.
So you have a new album coming up. By the time this airs, it will be out.
Whoa, we're in the future.
We're in the future right
Cool.
now. Tell me about what this new era is about.
It's rebirth, rediscovery of our love for this band. I think after doing the 20-year celebration last year, we felt really reinvigorated by that. We felt a lot of love from the fans and the audience, like kind of gathering around, you know, a celebration of our legacy. And so we decided, I don't think we knew as we were writing it necessarily, but when we landed in a place where we had a body of work and it was becoming an album, it kind of felt like we were writing a reflection on 20 years of being an all-time low and the sort of story arc of like the highs and lows of that journey and going through the tumble dryer of you know, being like doing this for so long.
And sonically speaking, it definitely
speak to the Sonics.
And I will speak to the Sonics.
Please, I would love if you spoke to the Sonics.
So like there is something. You do get a sense that there is some old and new all-time low on there in the future. Like it's got a little bit of everything.
For sure. That's a really good point, actually, speaking to the Sonics, is that like...
Sonically speaking.
I got asked this the other day. People are like, do you intentionally try to write to sound like older versions of yourselves? And I was thinking on that a minute and it was like, no, I think that's just like, that's in the ethos of our band. Like I think through all the eras of all-time low, whether we've kind of done something that feels more return to form or something that's pushed us creatively forward in a big way, there's always a sprinkle of like where we started, and I think that's always going to be there. So it's interesting on this one that I think it to your point, it feels like the most rounded out version of that. I think we kind of ran with it and we took it as far as we could go in terms of trying new things, but then I think it's like also it feels very realized to me as like, you know, grounded in where we came from for sure.
Yeah, you sort of have like your DNA as all-time low and you can take it different ways or add to it.
Yeah.
But you only released 4 songs so far. Tell me about some of the other songs.
Only? Oh, are you not entertained?
We spoil you guys.
Yeah, we've given you too much.
I mean, by the time this comes out, it will all be there.
It's all there.
But you haven't even released the full track list or anything.
No, we've been sprinkling, like peppering song titles and little hints, tastes, flavors of the rest of the songs. But no, I mean, but I guess by the time this drops, it's all out. So I hope everyone's enjoying. But yeah, like we kind of, as we put out the first few songs from the record, we kind of felt like we were creating like a movie trailer. It was like, how do you kind of tee up the album and speak to the whole thing? Because it's 15 songs. It's a pretty large-ish body
A
of
tease
work.
while not giving too much away.
Yeah. So it's we wanted to lead with different ends of the spectrum that I think this album visits.
And since this will be out, who are the collabs on the album? I won't spill.
So I feel so lucky to have the folks on this album that we do have. We got JoJo, the original JoJo, not the Siwa JoJo.
Either one would be
great. But we got the original. No, it was an incredible, like, cool full circle moment of getting Jo on this record. Like we met her years ago at a jazz club here in LA. And it was like she would jump up and do a few songs with the house band that was there. It was like we would just sit in awe of the talent that would get up and play. And we got to talking that night and kind of stayed in touch over the years and just never really always stayed friends in each other's orbits, but like never thought about collabing on anything. And then we wrote this song Sugar, and I just, for whatever reason, I just kept hearing her on it.
Yeah, you were saying that like day of writing in the studio.
It was just one of those weird things where I was like, I just think she would be really, this song was made for her kind of thing. And I had no idea if she'd ever kind of done anything in the alt space or the rock space or anything like that before. And so I shot her the song and was just like, hey, would this be something you'd want to try? And she was like, I didn't hear back from her right away. And I was like, oh, she's definitely not into this. And then like the next day or a few hours later, I can't remember how long I had to sit and sweat. But she was like, oh my God, I love this. And the rest was kind of like magic from there. She came on board and absolutely crushed it and took the song to a completely different place. And then you want to speak to the other one? Yeah.
So we got Rustin Kelly on the album, who
Rusty.
We've all just been massive fans of for so long. He's one of my top listened to artists every year. He's like a place of comfort on tour when I'm like feeling sad, missing home or whatnot. And we kind of just we wrote the song. Well, you and Dan wrote it, and it was one of those songs where like we need to get Rustin on this. It's perfect for him. It's perfect to have both you guys singing on it. And he lives in Nashville, and that's where we did the record. So we invited him in, and it was honestly like so crazy being in the studio and listening to one of your favorite singers like record one of your songs, interpret.
Yeah.
It was one of those like, fuck yeah, this is.
We lived with the song for a while. Like the song was finished for a good bit. It was something that I had written earlier on with Dan, and like it was another one that we kept coming back to it and going like, man, this sounds like it was written for Rusty. And he was firing up an album cycle. We kind of, it was all, again, kind of great serendipitous timing. Like he had a show in Nashville. We were in Nashville. He was doing this, he does this like dirt emo thing where he does a bunch of like covers from our genre. And we went to the show and he finally, I've been like telling him for a long time, like, do Dear Maria, what the hell, man? And so he was like, all right, let's do it. And we did it together that night. And I feel like that was sort of the beginnings of this idea coming together. So yeah, from there, we convinced him to get into the studio. And
it was so crazy being in front of house and watching you and Rustin sing Dear Maria. I was like, it's like two of my favorite singers like singing at the same time. I was like, let's fucking go.
Out of body, cool. For sure.
We allowed to curse?
No. This interview's over.
Speaking of serendipitous, let's get into some of your show memories.
HFStival, RFK Stadium, 2001, in Washington, D.C. 2001, we didn't know each other yet. We went to the same school. We knew of each other, but we didn't like really, was that?
I feel like it was before
you'd even come to Ridgely.
Oh, no, it was. It was.
Yeah.
It was that year, but like I don't think we went together.
No, we didn't go together. Yeah, we like knew of each other, but we weren't friends yet. Because I do remember like seeing you there.
Right.
But yeah, we hadn't become homies yet.
I was the mysterious new kid.
Yeah. We were in eighth grade, and HFStival was a massive radio station on the East Coast, and they would put on this huge festival, maybe something similar. I don't even know if they have stuff like this anymore, because it was in a football stadium. So like, I mean, it was bigger than like a normal festival.
It was huge.
Yeah, it was massive.
I mean, it was really, really big. Like I think at the time, that station was probably the biggest rock station on the East
Yeah,
Coast.
maybe
Maybe the one in New York was like
Yeah.
number one, but the DC Baltimore station was huge, and the scene around it was massive, and this show was huge. RFK, I must have been like 30 to 50,000 people, I think, when it was like
for sure.
at its peak.
Yeah.
And yeah, we I mean, just little old me, little old you being like massive rock fans, going like we both went separately. I went with a group of friends, and
My brother took me.
we must have been like literally, there must have been times where we were probably 25 feet away from each other. And
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing you because you wore like yellow parachute pants.
I sure did.
Like I remember, I have that image of like walking by and it's like, oh, like that's a new guy at school, whatever, blah, blah,
I got to bring those
blah.
back.
But it was the first like kind of real concert what I went to, and probably you as well, right? Like,
It was the first like big festival thing
Yeah.
that I'd ever attended. Yeah, it was overwhelming.
but I mean, like, it was, it's 2001, so all these bands who are now massive were kind of coming up. Like Coldplay played really early on the main stage.
Wow.
They just had Yellow out really.
Linkin Park was like
Linkin Park was like in the middle
fourth
of
or
the
fifth
lineup.
band on, daytime slot. Like just
Good
crazy.
Charlotte played like second, and they filmed a music video for Festival Song, which was a song that they wrote about this festival.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Festival Song was written about HFStival because
Was it really?
it was, yeah,
Wow.
because they grew up, in DC in the area, and they grew up going to it as well, and so they filmed. That's why they filmed the music video for it. So we were in, if you look at the Festival Song music video, we're in there somewhere in the crowd.
Yeah, we always used to say that. Like we would watch it back later and you'd be like, "That's me right there." I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's you, but
Yeah, for sure. And it was just one of those things that makes you realize like what live music really is. It was my first time smelling weed. Like I was with my brother, and I was like, what does that smell? And he's like, that's weed, my dude. I was like, all right, it smells kind of skunky.
I'm in.
I'm sure it was awesome weed because it smelled so skunk. But yeah, and it was just such a it was my first time crowd surfing. I made my brother like put me up there and crowd surf to like
Somebody threw me.
someone threw you.
Someone like there was I remember maybe AFI was playing or something, and I remember there was just this massive dude next to me who was like, "You ever crowd surfed before, buddy?" And I was like, "What?" And he just picked me up and launched me into the crowd. It's my fault for being in the pit and being small.
So you're like,
Being
what?
small.
Before you know anything, you're just being launched
I was
into
just,
the air.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
It was
really cool.
sick.
We were probably like 11 or 12, like
Yeah.
7th
You did
or 8th
not
grade.
consent to that crowd surfing.
I don't think I did, but hey, it
You
might
did
have
it.
been the thing that got me in. Like
Yeah.
that might be why I'm here now.
I just remember crowd surfing and being like, again, like a little kid going down a slide for the first
it
time.
literally was. It's the
Yeah.
equivalent of that. It's like the first
Being
time.
so scared to do it, and once you do it, you're like, more.
So you were crowd surfing there too?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I made my brother put me up there, and I was like, what do I do? And he's like, just lay back, man, and let the crowd take you. And I was like,
Enjoy
I'm scared.
the
It
ride.
smells like shitty weed.
That's amazing. I spent the entirety of the 2010 Bamboozle Roadshow tour trying to get Good Charlotte to play festival song.
Oh.
And they didn't?
No.
Guys.
I'm sure we honestly probably
Pretty
did.
rude,
We
Good
probably
Charlotte.
did too, because we we love that
I
song.
love that song.
We're
And I
at-
never knew the history of it. So thank you.
We're at the music video filming of it and everything.
You're going to learn some facts. Jack's
Yeah.
going to drop some knowledge.
Yeah.
So
And
excited.
yeah.
So excited. Yeah, who else played at this festival? Who did you go to see?
So at the time, Linkin Park was
Yeah.
that was their first album. So Linkin Park was a big one. Good Charlotte, Newfound Glory opened.
Yep.
I was a big Stained fan at the time, and they were the headliners.
Was Limp Bizkit on that year?
Limp Bizkit was not on that
That was
year,
a
and I was
different year,
deeply
yeah.
upset because I was a massive Limp Bizkit fan. I'm not sure if Fred came out and sang. Oh no, because Stained did Other Side, but I don't know if Fred came out.
Right. It's all a blur.
Yeah, but it was a lot of it was a lot of also like 90s rock bands and 90s artists, alternative artists that had kind of bled over. Like Fatboy Slim headlined our day.
Oh yeah, crazy.
SR-71 was a local band.
This
that
was
had done the
this was
radio.
at a time too when like we were literally being driven to school. So like there was a lot of time spent in the car. And like so I remember going like for me, I was really excited to see the bands that I was getting into, like Newfound Glory and Good Charlotte. And like I was
Lit.
just starting to get into that genre. But then all the headliners were bands that were all over the radio. And we listened to the radio all the time when Mom drove me to school. So yeah, I mean, it was like you couldn't be mad about any of the lineup because it was all so familiar to that era. Yeah, pretty important defining like moment in rock, and like alt rock at the time was massive.
It was massive. And
So
it was,
big.
And all rock was like, it was so, it was Fatboy Slim playing the same show as Stained, playing the same show as Linkin Park, playing the same show as Newfound Glory. Like it was really diverse and a little bit all over the place, which is I think it kind of is like that a little bit more now these days. Yeah. It wasn't always like that, but I think it's kind of come back around to that.
For sure. We're living in that era again.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
Back around.
I don't know if you guys saw like the Stagecoach lineup. There's like Goo Goo Dolls are playing. Or
oh,
something.
cool.
And I'm like, okay, so we're mixing it up.
We were at Riot Fest the other day, and we played Riot Fest, and it was like Beach Boys, us, then Jack White, and like Weezer. Like I was like, oh, cool. Like,
which is a lineup we always knew that we.
Yeah, we always knew that we'd play after the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. We were like about to go on stage. I was listening to the Beach Boys. I'm like, this is one of those moments where like, this is surreal. Real crazy.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I think Stamos was there as well.
So this was your first. You went to HFStival. I'm trying not to watch.
You keep nailing it.
Yeah, you're
getting it so right.
HFStival. Like years after that, because it was kind of like the biggest festival in your area.
I think I went a couple more times. We
went together, and then we eventually did play it.
Yeah, we won a Battle of the Bands. Like literally the first year out of high school that we had just signed a record deal, and things felt like maybe they were becoming a reality, not just we weren't just a high school band. And the first kind of big pinnacle moment that happened for us was that we won this Battle of the Bands to open that year's HFStival.
Mm-hmm. It was like Kanye and Panic.
Yeah,
can't remember who else played.
Yeah,
but it was.
It was a crazy moment for us, just like getting to go and do that main stage and be like, whoa, we're in it now.
It's cool.
We grew up attending, and then we were on. Yeah, it was just a special moment for sure.
So when you guys were there separately, how much time did it take afterwards for you two guys to be a band?
Probably like months, honestly. This was in the spring of 2001, I believe, and by like spring of 2002, I think we were maybe already.
We started. I mean, the full band came together in 2003.
Yeah. Early 2003.
I would like we probably had started linking up and like playing guitar together, kind of thing, and then being like, we need to find a drummer. And there were like we would play with other people before we were All Time Low. There were some other kids that we would like jam with, and would have a band for a week and then break up. And it was like the worst band breakup of all time, Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to recover from this?
Yeah, we had about like a year of like during 2002, me and Alex had a year of just, jamming with other people and trying to figure out what the right combo of members is. But by the end of like 2002, early 2003, it was me, Alex, Ryan, and Zach.
Yeah. And that one stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Over 20 years.
Yeah.
Were you guys playing music like individually, but like by yourselves, like playing guitar or anything like on your own?
Yeah. One thing about me is that I'll play guitar by myself. That's something like I'll just sit there and play guitar.
I used to play a lot more.
In fact, I think I do that more than I play for other people. Like outside of our shows, I never, excuse me, I'm not the kind of person that like, if there's a guitar around, it's like, I'm not like the Here's Wonderwall guy, I get way too shy to do that. I think you're probably the same.
Yeah.
But like alone, if I have a house to myself for a day, I will sit there and play guitar all day and then not tell anyone about it. That's like my
no content,
my
no
zen.
I should probably do that more. I used to do that a lot when I was a kid because when we grew up, the internet was pretty basic when it came to like there wasn't really social media.
Right.
There weren't a lot of things to do online other than look up So there was a lot of in our rooms playing guitar, playing Good Charlotte, AFI, Sum 41.
Playing guitar alone in your room is the original doom scrolling.
Yeah, it is.
Like you just feel all the feelings and you go to your sad place and then you're just like,
how are you feeling?
Fuck you, Dad.
Anything else about HFStival? Did you, is it still going on?
No, I don't think so. It's the station, as stations do, I think went away for some time. Is it back?
They brought it back last year, I feel like, but I don't know if the station's really around. It might be.
Yeah, I don't know. But the festival's not a thing anymore. But it was, RIP. It was like pretty iconic back then.
Good while it lasted.
Yeah.
I don't know, like K-Rock is LA's radio station.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like Weenie Roast or Almost Good to Christmas are like
there's K-Rock 987.
Yeah.
And they each one has like
Alter Ego.
Yeah, Alter Ego.
But they don't have anything that massive, I don't think.
It was really iconic, even to the point that like when we, grew up and started touring with the Good Charlotte dudes and we would talk about it, they were like, because they came up in that scene around that time and they were like, no, even back then, all of the rock bands knew like this was the festival to play.
Yeah, it was.
Because this is like pre-Riot and all this stuff. Like this is the one you want it to be on because like you can look up pictures of it. There's so many fucking people. It's crazy. And like
cut to picture now.
All these bands were some were big, some were bigger than others. But I don't think they were playing to like 50,000 people a night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was huge. Yeah. It was really a big event.
Cool.
It went all weekend, right? Or was it just
Yeah,
one day?
it's 2 days.
Yeah.
And like, it's something you definitely want. If you were in a band back then, like you wanted to be a part of.
Yes. And so you played it Battle of the Bands.
Yeah, we played a Battle of the Bands to win, to open up the main stage, and we won. We were in high school, so we were 17,
We were the best.
18.
We were the best at this.
Were you all-time low?
Mhm.
We were.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point,
2006, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right before we graduated.
It was. I think by then we had signed our first record deal because we signed our first deal with Hopeless in our senior year before we graduated. So it was like
we signed February of 2006, and this show was probably like April of 2006.
that year was bizarre because we were just like we were finishing high school, literally going like, "Let me the fuck out of here!" Like I'm not in school anymore. I'm in a rock band. It's official. So it was. I think that was like that Battle of the Bands and that festival was like. I think I kind of mentioned it. It was like that felt like the turning point and the beginning of like this is real.
And then we did Warped Tour for the first time that year. And
Amazing. Let's skip forward to
Pop Disaster Tour with Green Day and Blink-182, Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, 2002. I had been to HFStival, but this was the first show I'd bought tickets for, just like a regular show to go to, and it was Blink and Green Day. I was a massive Blink fan at the time. Green Day had been around in my life for many years because of my brother being an older brother playing me good music. But Blink was like on, I think it was Take Off Your Pants and Jacket had just come out maybe like 7 or 8 months before. So they were kind of taking over the world and had deeply affected my life. It had taken over my life as well.
Was that your first obsession?
Yeah. Limp Bizkit was. Yeah, Limp Bizkit was Blink was the first time I was like, oh, this is because, Blink's whole thing was I was obsessed with the music, but I was obsessed with the lifestyle and the clothes and the kind of everything that kind of came with the band.
Everything that came with Dickie shorts.
Yeah, hell yeah. And Atticus and Hurley. And so my mom took me and my buddy John, and this was kind of, a little dark story, but it was shortly after 9/11. And so you couldn't bring cell phones into shows anymore because they were just being overly careful about everything. And so you had to check your cell phones when you got there. And this was at Hershey Park Stadium, which was, it's big. It's maybe like 15, 20,000 people. So we get into the show and we couldn't get field passes. They were sold out. So we were up in the stands and we get there and, we're 11 or 12 and me and John go, Mom, can we go down to the crowd? She's like, hell no. Like, cause there's no one has cell phones. And so like, I'll never find you. And we're like, please, 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 please. And she said yes. And we ran down there, jumped the fence, went to the crowd.
This is adorable.
Yeah, it was super fun. Yeah, went in the crowd, smelled weed for the second time. Slightly better weed, I think, maybe. Probably not though.
None of it was good then.
Yeah, none of it was
all,
good.
Any weed being smoked at concerts back then was the shittiest weed.
Shittiest weed, yeah.
Not a pleasant.
But Green Day played.
Grown in someone's
another kind of funny
closet.
thing about the ticket stub said Saves the Day on it.
Huh.
And at the time, I didn't know who the band Saves the Day was. So I was so confused because when I got the ticket, it said Pop Disaster Tour, Green Day, Blink-182, Saves the Day. And so I was like, oh, a second name for the tour is Green Day and Blink Saves the Day. And I was like, that's kind of like interesting.
You just thought it was what they were doing?
I thought it was what they're calling like Pop Disaster, Blink and Green Day Saves the Day. I'm like, okay, that's kind of a long ass weird title, but okay. And then so Saves the Day started playing, and I was like, oh, they're a band, which is cool. And then I ended up falling in love with Saves the Day as well. But Green Day played first, which I found kind of surprising at the time, even being there for Blink essentially. I still was like, it's Green Day. But Green Day went on. I ended up knowing almost every song. It was crazy. They put on the sickest show to this day still. And that was just fun as shit. A lot of crowd surfing, all that, a lot of moshing.
They were on Warning, right? At that
They
time?
were on Warning, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Great
then
record.
when Blink came on, they opened with Anthem Part 2. So just the curtain opens and it's like na 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 na, and I was just like, "That's what I want to
Sorry, do that one more time.
Na 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 na.
Sorry, I had to get to the place.
And as soon as the curtain opened, I was like, "Yep, that's what I want to do." Like watching Tom play that, done. I want to be on that stage. It was awesome.
Inspo moment.
Inspo moment. They did like a funny sketch in the middle of the show where Tom was playing What Went Wrong, I think, which is an acoustic song with just him. And while he's doing that, Mark and Travis are having a picnic next to him and just like drinking wine on stage. I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Adorable.
And then kind of full circle moment. we toured with Blink in 2016 on the California tour.
Sounds right.
And it was us and A Day to Remember and Blink.
17? 18.
2016, yeah. And we played Hershey Park stadium with them. And I told Mark the whole story, and it was super cool. I told him on stage, and I think Mark came out and like punked us like during the set. Like
full circle moment.
Yeah,
sure.
it was really cool.
I didn't get to go.
No.
I wanted to go and I wasn't allowed.
Oh.
I don't know if
Is it because like Blink was swearing?
I'm not sure. I think I asked to go. And my mom said no. I don't remember why. I probably did something bad.
You're probably grounded.
I was probably grounded.
Being a bad boy.
Yeah.
We did have another kind of full circle moment before we played Hershey Park with Blink, where we were on tour with Green Day in Europe. And we were the one of three on the tour, and the two of three on the tour was Angels and Airwaves.
Oh yeah.
So we played this show. We did a couple shows with them, and it was like us. So then that was kind of weird because I was like, oh, like it's kind of like Blink and Green Day, and we're opening up, and it was like Tom was there, and that was kind of fucking crazy too.
And you worked with Mark Hoppus too.
Yeah.
You guys are
also crazy full circle. I mean, it's like this is that thing of like, you know, they don't meet your heroes, but it's like I don't know that I agree. Like I think, you know, it's one of those things where we started off idolizing these artists and these bands, and they were a huge part of the reason, instrumental in why we wanted to do it and what we loved about the genre, and seeing people who were, you know, carrying their friendships onto the stage. You know, I think music can be very self-serious, and I think there were a lot of bands out there at the time that were like projecting big like rock star energy, and it was like, don't talk to me, I don't talk to my band, everybody sucks, and like
I love that.
You know, it was kind of the vibe back then, and like I remember seeing bands like Green Day, Blink, and Newfound, and these people that were like very clearly just like friends that were also playing music, and that's what made me want to do it. That's what pulled me into that genre from other genres of music that I was also into, and so yeah, to then get in the space, start making music of our own, and then somehow land in a spot where we became like peers with these people and buddies with these people, and like develop relationships with them. It's pretty like I think have moments when I zoom out and go like, wow, what a crazy fucking trajectory that is, and how wild would it be if I could have told my 12, 13-year-old self that like one day we'd sort of be in the mix. And you know, now it's I'm very grateful, and it's cool that we get to kind of experience it from the other side and you know, create with some of these people. Like getting to do Simple Creatures with Mark was unreal for me, like, and unreal for all of us. Like I remember the phone call when I told you guys, like we'd never, none of us had ever even like scratched at the idea of side projects before.
You were nervous to call me.
All Time Low had always been our only love, and like it was the first time when I had to strongly consider, like, whoa, I got to float this by the rest of the boys and be like, I mean, like. I knew I wanted to do it, but at the same time, I was like, I would totally get it if the guys were like,
were you kind of scared? And a part of you was like, please just say don't do this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
don't allow me to do it.
Yeah, it was intimidating for sure, and like a lot to like live up to, and you know, pressure I put on myself. But like, yeah, I remember calling the boys and being like, so I got a thing that we need to discuss, and they were like, oh my God, he's gonna quit. Like I think for a second it was like they thought I was gonna step away, but I was like, Mark asked me to be in a band, and they were instantly just like, fucking do it. What are you doing? So
I was like, do it.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck.
and then they said yes, and then I was like, now I have to figure out how to make this album. But no, it was a really cool moment, and very kind of the boys to be not selfish about it.
And there was never any moment where you're like, this is what it is now. There's no all-time low. Like, there was never any question.
No, me and, like, even before we kind of, like, decided that it was going to be a project, Mark and I, because originally it was just Mark wanted to make music with a bunch of his friends. Blink was on some downtime, and Mark was kind of reaching out to people like, I think Josh from 21, and like just people that he had worked with and collabed with over the years and liked working with. And I was lucky that Mark hit me up to do a song, and we got in the room and wrote like a few ideas. And then it was like a few days later that Mark called me out of the blue and was like, hey man, like I've been sitting with all the music I'm making, and like some of it's connecting for me, some of it's not. And also I have time right now, like, is this just a band? And that's when that kind of got that whole thing rolling in to us taking it seriously and being like, do we just make this a project instead of like Mark and Friends?
Right.
And yeah, it was all, downhill from there.
The first time I saw the promo picture, I was like, holy shit. Like that's when it became so real. And I was like, that's wild. Like not just like Mark and Alex taking a picture together. Like they're like in they're doing promo pictures. I'm like, this is so sick.
It was surreal. Yeah. It still is. It was a really cool chapter for us. Like, and we knew, I didn't answer your question. We knew going in that it was going to be it's our side gig.
Yeah.
Like we both very much said like, this is something we will do when our main jobs are like on pause.
Right.
And, ATL was on a little bit of a break between records. Blink was on a break between records. And it was just a nice sweet spot where we were like, we can go and do something, explore it, and then, go do a couple shows. And it was fun. It was freeing. It was liberating. I think both of us at the time in our lives, like, also maybe needed a different creative outlet. I think for Mark and myself, I can't speak for him, but I think we were both sort of in a place where we wanted to try something a little different and not be handcuffed to the thing that we'd been doing for so many years, because there's an expectation there. So it was really fun to go in and kind of like kick the tire on something there were no
rules.
Yeah, there were no rules. We could just make. It was fun.
Thanks, I Hate It is a really great song.
Oh, thanks.
Love it.
That's the top one. That's still the top streamer.
It's great.
Mine was Adrenaline. Adrenaline was mine.
Yeah.
It seems like you're such a fan of that project too.
Yeah, no, I really am. Yeah, I was just like, this is fucking awesome.
Jack went and made sick music in that time too.
Yeah, but also like I just remember like when they had the rehearsals, and I was living in LA at the time, and they were rehearsing in LA. I'm like, can I come to the rehearsals? Because I was just like, cool. I was like, oh, I get to hang out with Mark more. Like it was sick.
It was all so funny because like we decided that we were gonna play live shows, and then it was like, but it's just two guys. Like we don't have a drummer. We're used to being in a band, and then this was a much more digital leaning project, and so it's like me and Mark and a laptop. It was a strange thing to get our heads around.
It was just like I just looked at it like, oh, great. Like I get to be closer to one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Me?
Yes.
Thanks, man.
Yes, Alex.
Let's go to
Foo Fighters, Reading and Leeds Fest 2012. Reading and Leeds. This one was special. Obviously, we were already an active band. We were already touring. This was something we were on tour and playing a bunch of shows across Europe that the Foo Fighters were headlining.
Basically, just trying to get in with that camp.
Yeah, basically, it felt like we were stalking them. But a lot of the time when they route these tours, and like a lot of the time you do end up being on the same kind of routing as bands that you're not on tour with, and so we just happened to. We kept showing up on bills with the Foo Fighters that summer, and they were headlining Reading and Leeds, and it was like the Foo Fighters were kind of like, it felt like they were back on top, like back at their best. And I happened to know their tour manager, Gus, through Mark, and he was really kind to us and knew that I was a massive Foo Fighters fan, a massive fan of like everything Dave Grohl has done musically. And so it was like we were just kind of lurking side stage as the Foos were going to play. I was going to go out front and watch the show because usually like the headliner shuts down the stage and it's, it is what it is. And Gus was like, get up here.
Yeah, you guys come over here.
Yeah.
And we just sat on the stage.
Put us like right side stage. And I just remember sitting there like bottle of wine in hand, watching this moment happen. And it was like, for me, the Nirvana live record at Reading is like one of my favorite live albums ever. I think it's an absolutely iconic rock show. And so kind of there was a bit of that energy coming through, and you could tell Dave was feeling that too that night. And like it was something that was so special, and to be that like front row for it was I felt very lucky, and it was inspiring. And I think like it probably fueled me for the next like 5 years of touring to just be like, that's what I'm chasing now. I need that.
Because you got to watch them as a fan, but you also saw people reacting to them, right? Like just flipping out.
And there's something about European festivals in like the middle of a hot summer night and like 60,000 people singing Everlong. Like that, just like
I was crying. I was goosebumps. I was tears. Like it was an emotion.
And we were like, because like we didn't want to like be like standing on the side of the stage and like in the view of people, we were just like sitting like cross-legged style on the stage, and just like so it just almost I felt like a little kid, just like watching them and
story time.
Yeah,
big time. But yeah, to your point, it was pretty amazing that like we got to watch the show as fans, but then also gauge the crowd's response and like being in that unique position of like feeling both sides of the energy was It was
I was like, oh,
pretty next
this is
level.
what it's like to be in the Foo Fighters.
Mhm.
Sounds fucking awesome.
yeah, I want that.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get in? How were you introduced to like the Foo Fighters? Do you remember your introduction to them?
Honestly,
Like musically?
Oh,
They were played on HFStival a lot.
Yeah.
Like I remember hearing this, going to school and
HFS, yeah,
HFS, like
yeah.
the radio station that had. So they were, it was a lot of TRL music videos because their Learn to Fly video was really big at the time when I discovered them. And remember, like we basically like based a lot of our music videos on the concept of Learn to Fly being like a goofy video but a serious song.
Yeah, their approach, they always said in like interviews and stuff, their approach was like, your label hands you a check to go make a video. What are you going to do? Like, are you going to make something that's self-serious or just kind of dick around with it? And we adopted that philosophy for a lot of our videos. And yeah, I mean, they were just, my exposure to it, I think, was the same as yours. It was everywhere. It was unavoidable, like Everlong and Hero and those songs were just like peppered all over the radio constantly.
We were young, like probably like 8 or 9 when I started listening to the Foo Fighters. And I don't think I knew who Nirvana was. I don't think I fully understood the connection because I was like too young to really know what any of that means. I don't even know if I knew that Kurt wasn't alive anymore, to be honest. But once I found that out, I like got even more kind of into it. I was like, oh shit, that adds this whole crazy dynamic that I didn't even know about.
Wait, that was the drummer?
Wait,
you're
what?
telling me? Yeah, but it was a special time.
Did you guys play Ready and Lead that year?
We did.
Yeah.
We were on the bill as well and had a great show. Our laptop, we had just started using backing tracks and like for the intro of Weightless, which is like an electronic drum beat. And it was like the first time that we had like a malfunction. And so it was like literally how the song starts with that beat at the beginning of Weightless, and the laptop shit the bed on us.
So we just covered Damn It by Blink.
So we were like, this is the biggest crowd we've ever played for. What do we do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We covered Damn It by Blink, but honestly.
No, it was like the birth of, we started the song
Weightless
by ringing out, and that, like the way we did it at Reading that day, like went off so hard that we started playing it that way for years after. It kind of informed like how we were going to do that song live for a long time.
Happy little accident.
It truly was.
Tell me a little bit about the recording of Everyone's Talking.
No. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
It was an awesome process. I think what stands out to me about this one is the last few records we've sort of been very self-sufficient with how we've gone about recording. We've either like rented a house or gone and taken a trip and like sort of isolated ourselves to a place to make the music rather than like traveling to a studio or renting a studio or something like that. And this time it was another extension of that. We have our own studio now in Nashville where myself and our like fifth Beatle, Dan Swank, who produced the record, he works out of the studio. And it was the first time we kind of really got to go and make an album in our own studio, which was very cool. And it's nice because it's very freeing. Like you're kind of isolated still, but it's your space. You can there's no worry about like, are we being too loud in this rental house in Palm Desert? Are the neighbors pissed? I think when we were making Wake Up Sunshine, we had cops show up, because we were up at like 2 a.m. recording guitars and people were like, what the fuck? It's off season in Palm Desert. Why?
The cops literally like look into place, they see all these instruments, they're like, you guys are good. We're like, oh, that was easy.
Dude, it's like the dude, I remember him being like, can I come inside and look around? And I was like, no, you cannot. And he was like, all right.
But he did see the guitars and stuff. He was like, oh, all right.
You're fine.
Because we're not partying. I think it was just.
We're making an album.
Yes.
We'll get you a signed copy when it's time.
Yes. He was like, thank you. He's like, who are you guys again? I'll tell him up. Never heard of you. I'm good.
I don't want it. I don't want none of that. So yeah, it was special because it was our space. It was on our terms. And this is the first time we've made an album on our own imprint label as well. So like kind of the pressure to deliver is on in the sense that, we're the ones that are responsible for the mess we're about to make. But then like
you have no one to answer to.
Yeah, but also there was no one. There was no one chirping in our ear throughout the creative process, which I think is very freeing when you just want to make something that you want to make. And I think at this point, 20 years in, we have it fairly dialed to what we want to sound like. Whether or not people enjoy that is up to them. But like, we know what we want All Time Low to be. And that was probably my favorite part of the process.
So you got to choose the singles. You got to choose the order it comes out and everything.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much been led by us. You know, I think we have great people around us that are there for like a little bit of advice when we need it, but we're not kind of answering to higher ups or anybody that like
more of a conversation.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like, you do want to surround yourself by people that understand the band and get where you came from and get where you're trying to go. But yeah, it's not you're not really answering to someone like Alex said. You're collaborating.
And no one's forcing your hand. I think that's the biggest thing is like the people that we have around us now know when we are getting it right and know when to like interject. And that's a really valuable piece of the puzzle. Is like sometimes people force their opinions in and it derails shit. So we're in a nice place now where I think everything we're doing with like we're saying it with our chest, you know.
Tell us about some of the other songs that are not yet released.
Okay. A favorite of mine, I will say for vibe alone is there is a song called Little Bit. And I think it's going to be one that absolutely pops live. We've been in our creative processes recently. We have so many songs, so many albums that I think it's like a thought experiment to be like, what vibe don't we have for the show yet? And Little Bit is one that like there's an energy to it that I don't think we've ever really tapped. There's some songs that kind of have the vibe, but it's like adjacent to. And I just think it's going to go off, which I'm really looking forward to. What about you?
What is the vibe for a Little Bit?
It's aggressive.
It's a little punky.
It's it's a jumper. It's
kind of bratty a little bit.
It's bratty for sure. She's cute. She's funny. She's sweet, but she's also sassy.
I like it.
Yeah.
When you guys play a new song live for the first time, are you watching the audience or are you trying to just play it right?
I'm just trying not to fuck up, to be honest. And everyone will probably have a different answer, but I know Ryan's will be the same. But
that is what it is.
Yeah.
When we play a song for the first time, it's pure fear.
Yeah.
It's terror. It's rare. It's rare that we enjoy the first playthrough of a song.
1000%.
Because you're trying not to fuck it up. You're also like reading the crowd and being like, are they into it? Do they like it?
But also there's no way they could really be into it because they're processing it. Yeah. So especially on this tour, on this record release, there's a couple songs we released that no one's ever heard. Like they weren't even out yet.
It's really just a bad time for everyone.
It's like there's
nothing
very nerve-wracking. I don't like it.
The fans are confused. They're lost.
Yeah, playing new songs, it's not good for anyone. And I get why a lot of bands just play their old stuff. And I get why fans say play your old shit. Because it's a terrifying experience for all involved.
Yeah, fair.
But you have to do it. You have to rip the Band-Aid off and then we're in a sweet spot where we can play it again.
Yeah.
Yes. So of the new batch, are there ones you're most excited to play live? Little Bit, I guess.
Little Bit's up there for me.
Butterflies is like a little bit of a harder song for us.
Oh, I love that song.
I think, and we got to play it live, once now or twice? Twice now.
Yeah.
And yeah, at Riot Fest and Louder in Life.
It went off.
It went off. It was super fun. Like, it's just one of those songs that like is gonna get the crowd moving, and those are super fun.
I think anytime the energy translates onto the stage is like I feel very satisfied. There have been songs in the past that we've written and I'm like, this one's gonna be great, and then we do it and it doesn't hit, and we try it for a few more days on the tour and it doesn't hit.
Just force feed it,
and it kind of comes. Yeah. It like quietly leaves the set list and never returns. And like I feel like that's the most defeating. Like when you've written a song that you felt good about in the studio, but then it just doesn't work live. That to me, as a band that I think is a live band first, I think that's the most defeating thing.
And the truth is, some songs just don't translate live
100%.
well. Yeah. 100%. No matter what kind of artist you are.
Yeah. Let's talk shit on some other bands now about what songs live don't work for them.
I gotta be honest with you. I don't think there's probably like every single John Mayer song works well live.
Yeah.
Like they just all sound.
I'm gonna say it. When Blink plays "Damn It," I think it's something.
Yeah, I can't like imagine any John Mayer song not being great live. There's just something about his music that I'm just like, these are just, I don't know.
It's just something about him.
Are there any tweaks that have to be made to your songs to be live, or do you?
For sure.
Yeah,
great question.
Yeah, I mean, all over, like it runs the gamut. You know, sometimes like the key of the song feels really good in the studio, but then when I have to do it every day on stage, it's like maybe pushing my upper register a little too much, and just for like sheer survival, we have to key it down. The song "Oh No" from this new album is in a really comfortable range for me in the studio, but when we get out on the road and have to do it every day, I'm like, let's bring this down a half step. So like nerdy shit like that, where you just figure out what works better and serves the set. Sometimes we'll change keys for like flow of show. You know, if there's a few songs back to back that feel really good together, but one's in an ugly, out of key kind of mode, we'll change it, and that'll help the show flow. I mean, what else? Like sometimes it's just like like we were talking about, the energy's just not there. Like you get the song out in front of people, and it's like, this is not
like the bridge is kind of like ethereal or vibey, and like you're like, okay, so like Ryan, you need to hit the kick drum or something because like I'm falling asleep.
Yeah,
over
that's
here.
a good point.
Okay,
That's a good point.
I loved it when you opened with Satellite. That was super cool.
Oh,
The
thanks.
Shrine,
Yeah.
but I know that is probably one of the ones that you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, totally.
It's an, you know, that's a really good point, actually. Like songs that are like record intros and like interludes and things, you never know if those things are going to translate in a live space because you did it for the album.
Yeah.
Right? Like it helps the story and the narrative of the record. But yeah, that one actually, I think that one worked kind of okay.
Yeah,
That was
I
a fun
loved
one.
it.
Thanks.
But 15 songs.
Mhm.
How you gonna? I know you're not playing a 3-hour set like the Forever Tour. So
Can you imagine?
what babies get cut?
Well, here's the thing that's kind of lovely to think about is it's the first tour on the record. So if there's like some stuff you're like, oh, like we can't fit this in, there's going to be other tours at other times.
That
There's-
is lovely.
Yeah, it is. That is lovely.
That is lovely.
Um,
Way to find the bright spot.
yeah. So, and like you kind of have to have a lot of patience of like, oh, one day we'll
Yeah.
play this live.
For sure.
Yes.
We usually try most songs at least once live. Like I'd say probably like 80.
Yeah,
80%
there's not a ton that
of
we've
a
like
record.
never played.
Yeah.
I feel like no, they'll all work their way in at some point. I think sometimes it's even nice to like get the record out and see what the fans think.
Mhm.
Like we pick the singles leading up, and so far on this one, it's felt like we've been pretty like we're 4 for 4. I feel like people have really enjoyed, thankfully, what we've chosen to put out ahead of the record, and they've gone over well live. I was actually going to say The Weather has been one that when we first started playing it live, I was like, oh, I'm scared that the energy of this one's not in the right place for a live song.
Mhm.
And over time, over the last few times that we played it, it gets better and better and better. And so that's one that's like stepping up and
Nice.
upgrading as we get used to like how we do it live kind of thing. But yeah, for me, I think it's like we'll let the fans decide. We'll see like kind of what people are loving on the record, and then probably like make some changes to the set as we go. That's always my favorite thing about touring too, is like you don't have to be locked to what the day one show is. I think I always love when you see a band start a tour one way and then by the end of it, it's evolved and changed and grown. And
That's like my whole job is just like dissecting
Tracking
the
that,
playlist,
yeah.
dissecting the set list and being like, aha, they changed
Oh,
on
that's so
number
interesting.
3.
I mean, I use setlist.fm every single day on tour.
Amazing.
So I'll use it often to see like the last time we played here, what songs we played. But then sometimes I often use it to find out how many times we've played a city
big time.
and when the last time we played that city is. And also even just from a traveling standpoint of when I was in a place.
It honestly,
I mean?
it informs our show a lot too.
Yeah, it does.
Like, well, when we're coming up with a set list, we will look and see like, all right, we've beaten these songs to death. We probably should mix these ones up. Or, oh, like we'll be in an argument being like, no, we played that a ton. Or like
it's nice to have
And
something
we,
to
like,
settle
there's-
the arguments.
concrete evidence to be like, we have not played this recently.
Yeah.
You know, it's good.
It's also really helpful in places where, like when you don't play countries too much, like when we're in Southeast Asia or something and we haven't been there in like 6 years and
Yeah.
or even South America as well. And you're like, because it's, you forget, we've probably done 3 or 4 tours since then. And you want to make sure that, these people, for you've played 6 tours since then, but these
they
people
haven't
haven't seen you then. So like they haven't,
It's a really good point.
yeah.
Do you also feel like, because I interview some bands and they say like, listen, once we put the music out, it's not ours anymore. It's not about what we want to play. Like that
Right.
song belongs to them. Do you?
I think it's a good balance because there are songs that we feel like we need to play.
Yeah.
In a way, I justified it as like, okay, well, when I go to a show, when I go see Blink, when I see Green Day, there are songs I want to hear.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of have to take yourself out of it and put yourself in like the fan headspace for a second.
Definitely. I think you're the best at that in being pretty objective about like what the crowd's going to want versus what like where we're at with what we want to play.
But then I think there are times where I can be better at like you have to be selfish as well. It's your band. And you want and like you don't want to and you want to play some shit that you want to play some shit and like kind of doesn't matter what someone else thinks because
Has Dear Maria evolved at all? Because I know you talked about an interview that has had many lives.
Oh yeah.
It has evolved, actually. I was thinking about this the other day because we did a re-record of it
Mhm.
for a 20th anniversary. And for the second verse, I was like, I think we cut the guitars out. I think it's just bass and drums.
Yeah. It's
And
how
so
we
like
do
now
it.
every time I play live, I like start playing the second verse. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna stop playing. Like
I got a break.
I'm like,
That's
I'm
your-
gonna stop playing. I'm like,
That's you're right.
yeah. So we just kind of like changed things like that, and I think that's kind of fun when you've been playing a song for. It came out in 2008, so pretty long time.
Yeah. Crazy.
2007 maybe. I don't know.
I also know from my setlist stats, I've been to 27 all-time low shows.
Oh wow,
That's so sick.
that's rad.
That's a lot.
I think also because I was on the Bamboozle Roadshow then. That
Yeah.
made part
Yeah,
of it. So it was like just
definitely.
watching every night. So.
It is crazy because like we'll play Chicago and I'll be like, fuck, I feel like we've played Chicago so many times. And I'll look and it's like 50, and like I'll like go on setlist.fm and like count it all, and I'm like, that is so crazy how many times you've like play a city, and I don't know.
versus how many times you think you've played a
You
song.
think of
Yeah.
it's like
The
oh man, I feel like we've been here
memories
like 40
are
times. It's like 6. You're like, oh
Right.
like,
We're here all the time.
yeah.
You've been here twice.
anything else to say about the set list going forward, or like, are you gonna make space for switching up some songs?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the point we were saying before is I really hope that this show evolves, and I think it will. Like we're taking this tour around the world, and this is just leg one, and it's kind of like right on the release of the album. So I think as we go, we'll find what's working, what's maybe not working, or just find. I'm sure we'll find spots in the show where like we could.
What's causing riots online?
Exactly. Who's pissed that we're not playing something?
You were gonna lurk Reddit and find out.
Of course, and you have to. You have to. We're men of the people. So we'll find out like if there's anything missing, and you feel it pretty fast. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we don't have this energy in the show. We're missing a slow song here, whatever it might be, and then I'm sure it'll like transform as we go.
Do you guys have little band meetings like after the show to discuss?
Yeah.
Usually it's right when we get off stage and we're all just yelling because our ears have gone.
People think we're arguing, but it's just because we've had in-ears in all night and it's
And
Can't hear.
listening to a lot of music, and they're always like, Jack, you're yelling. I'm like, oh, sorry. But usually like literally 30 seconds after getting off stage.
You're like,
we always do a little debrief,
Okay.
which is nice. It's like you get in, you pour a little glass of wine, you're like, boys, how'd it go? What'd you think?
Yeah.
And then Jack starts screaming. I thought it was really good. Man.
amazing.
The adrenaline's still
Yeah,
just like
coursing.
here.
Cool. Well, I'm
Oh.
excited to hear the new album, and
Hell yeah.
thanks for sharing your
Sweet.
memories today.
You
Yeah,
bet.
thanks
Thanks
for
for
having
having
us.
us. This is so fun.